that MU69 is probably a binary object, 20 to 40 kilometers across, and that originally they thought the data showed that it may have a moon going around it, but now there's some debate about that. But the bottom line is that we were able to give them the data that they needed in order to be able to be confident to fly by MU69. The flyby is on January 1, 2019, and you can follow that on NASA TV if you're interested live, and you'll be able to see just what they see when they get there. So that was just an example of one of the missions that we flew out of Christchurch here. And if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer.
How often would that opportunity arise?
Well, these kinds of things do happen from time to time, but I couldn't tell you for that particular object how often they happen, but this is, I think, that was the third occultation we have done for various projects. We did the initial Pluto flyby observation prior to the Pluto flyby to do similar kind of work for them prior to that. We've done the MU69 occultation, and then we're going to do one here at the later on in this same deployment that we're here for now. In a couple of weeks, they'll be flying one out of here looking at Neptune's moon Triton, and they're going to be looking at the atmosphere. So the other thing you can do when you're looking at an object and you've got light in the background as it's coming towards you, if you can put yourself in the right place, you can actually see the light as it passes through the atmosphere of the object that you're looking at, as it grazes the surface, and you can actually do spectroscopy and determine what elements are present in the atmosphere.
Thank you.
What kind of life are you hoping to get out of the aircraft?
That's a good question. It was designed as a 20-year program, but it got delayed, so it's hard to say. It's going to be subject to, I think the biggest determinant will be its scientific productivity. If it's really scientifically productive, they'll probably keep it around longer. It depends on the budget situation in the U.S. It's got pretty strong scientific support. The airplane's in good shape. Probably the limiting factor on it is the engines. They're JT9D engines, which were the very first engines they put on the 747. Pretty much nobody uses those anymore. There's only one shop in the world that still overhauls them. You can't really get new parts. So a lot of our maintenance is we find cracks on secondary structures in the engine. We have to pull the engine, put a new one on. They're very difficult. It's a hydromechanical fuel control unit. So they're very difficult to get them to trim properly. So engines are probably the limiting factor. The rest of the airplane lasts quite a while.
I think it's nominally a 20-year program.
20-year program, though.
Can you not repower them? Repower?
Yeah, the Air Force. The Air Force had the laser, airborne laser, which was a 747-400. They offered to give us the engines for free. They had 800 hours on them, and the program said no. I think if they're going to keep it around for 20 years, they're going to have to re-engine it. But there's no plan to now, and it would be relatively straightforward to re-engine it.
So you became fully operational in 2014, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So you've been coming here every winter since then?
Yeah, we missed 2014 because the airplane was in maintenance. Our first year was 2013. This is our 5th deployment. Yes?
Yeah, a related question about life. It seems that President Trump was a little anti-science. Does that pose a threat to Sophia?
I can't really speculate on that.
Yeah, we can refer you to somebody who can answer that.
Yeah.
We have a public relations department.
Yeah.
2 slides ago, you showed several different dates on there. Now, is each one of those lines? How often do you fly? Do you fly night after night after night? Or?
Yeah. So I kind of popped these slides on him, and you really get a chance to set them up. This blue cyan line is the Sophia's observation. Those other lines are ground-based observations from Argentina.
Oh, okay.
So This is kind of the summary of all the data that was gathered on this occultation. And so the people, the ground-based guys, they just able to kind of determine the shape. And then SOFIA had this little notch that they suspect was a moon. Part of the problem with, we can fly the airplane fairly precisely, but this shadow moves at like 10,000 kilometers an hour across the ground, and the position's really not, it's kind of estimated, it's not known with a lot of precision until very late in the game. So Paul was a pilot on that mission. He put the airplane within 250 meters of where, both space and time-wise, of where he was supposed to be. But they may not have had where they told him to be perfectly correct.
That mark there's how many light years away would that be?
MU-69 is 4 billion miles away. So it's actually very close in astronomical terms. Pluto is at 3 billion miles, which was originally considered the outermost planet. This is another billion miles past that.
747 wouldn't reach there.
It takes light 4.5 hours to get to the spacecraft and 4.5 hours to come back. So everything has to be, that was when it was at Pluto at 3 billion miles. So everything has to be pre-programmed to be done autonomously, because by the time you found out what's happened, it's too late. So everything has to be pre-programmed, sent up to the spacecraft in advance, so that as it flies by at 37 or 35,000 miles an hour, it goes by and takes the images as it goes by, and then automatically starts sending the data back down.
Could you just comment on what it's like to fly an aircraft with a hole in the side?
Actually, you can't really tell. We have a green light in the cockpit that tells us it's open. They did a really nice, so a lot of concern about cavity resonance when they designed it, but they put in a ramp and it kind of strips the boundary layer. It's there's no indication in the cockpit, either noise. I mean, it is a loud airplane, but no noise, no handling qualities difference, no performance degradation with the door open. They did the engineering on that was very well done.
If you've ever opened a window on your car at 70 miles an hour, you know, you get one window open, you know, you set up that drumming sound at 500 miles an hour, and a door the size of a two-car garage door. You can imagine the aerodynamics involved, and they did an absolutely amazing job.
So with the door open, is there any limitation in that flight below the door?
We have so the airplane was qualified out to Mach, or when it was in commercial service, it was a Mach 9.2 airplane. We only tested out to, basically our top end is 8.7, so we don't have the higher Mach numbers. We have a restriction that we can't fly with the door open. We can't get sunlight in the cavity because it could be a fire hazard. And so we have some mission planning constraints. The door can really only be open above 34,000 feet. You could probably qualify it for lower, but there was no need, and they were anxious to get the thing in service, so we didn't spend a lot of time expanding that envelope. Yes?
You guys strike me as smarter than the average pilot, and I just
I tell you what, when you see the crew list and you're the only non-PhD on board, you're the dumbest person. You're the dumbest person on there.
I was wondering if you could tell us your backgrounds and how you got to become NASA research pilots.
I was an Air Force pilot in the U.S. Air Force, and I had one assignment flying tankers. I went to test pilot school, and then basically was a test pilot for the Air Force. I got out in 2000, just was with American Airlines for a couple years, and then got furloughed, ended up coming back into the Air Force as a civilian, and then did that for 8 years, and then transferred to NASA.
I'm actually kind of unusual. I'm a civilian. I'm about the only one at NASA as a pilot. It is. I came up as an airline pilot, a corporate pilot, flight instructor, and went to National Test Pilot School, fixed wing course, a short course there, and was able to come through the flight test ranks through smaller organizations, and I ended up with Boeing as a test pilot, and just happened that NASA were looking for large airplane test pilots to fly because of the programs like this. So that's how I ended up at NASA. But all the NASA pilots have either engineering or science degrees. They're AST. They're also referred to as AST research pilots, aeronautical engineers. So each of us carry that title and have that kind of a training.
Yeah, and actually I think our job description is aerospace engineer.
Yeah, the first is aerospace engineer, then research pilot. And Dave is also a research test pilot. That is indicative of the fact that there are two sides to what we do as research pilots at NASA. One is sensor platform aircraft, this is a prime example of that, where we use an airplane to fly an instrument, either looking up into space or maybe down on the ground, looking at geophysics and stuff like that. That's a sensor platform type operation. The other side of what we do is to support the space program, but also aerodynamic research. We do a lot of flight testing at Edwards, looking at supersonics, acoustics, biofuels, all kinds of different elements, but aerodynamics is the big one at Armstrong where we work, and so we have a number of test pilots that will do aerodynamic type research as well.
So that's what you do between the seasons?
Yeah, so the research pilots like Dave and I will fly on multiple programs, not just SOFIA. So while most of the people that work on SOFIA will work just on the SOFIA program, the scientists and engineers, telescope operators and that, the pilots jump from mission to mission and project to project as needed. So Dave, for example, works on the DC-8 and flies the Gulfstream, the SOFIA, and I fly SOFIA, I fly synthetic aperture radar work on the Gulfstream aircraft. I've done some of the acoustic research work in the Gulfstream, and I get to do some backseat stuff in the fighters as well. So it's very interesting, very interesting work. One day you can be flying a 747, the next day you're flying in an F-15. As far as pilots are concerned, it's a wonderful way to make a living.
Perhaps they should fly the Tiger Moth.
We'd love to. We'd love to. We have something called the TG-14, which is a little motor glider, which we use flying along underneath the supersonic fighters when we're doing sonic boom research. We'll lay a sonic boom down over an acoustic array on the ground, and then fly the little TG-14 motor glider underneath it, shut down the engine right before we're going to do the test point. And as we lay the sonic boom, they can measure it on the ground, but they can also measure it at 10,000 feet from a glider with acoustic equipment on board, and see the difference between 10,000 feet in the ground, and therefore make interpretations with respect to what effect the atmosphere is having on the sonic boom.
Wow.
We're flying low and slow as well.
Do each of you have a favourite aircraft?
My favorite is the one I'm flying at the moment. I like the DC-8. I think it was my first flight when I was a little kid. I think that was the first airliner I was in. It's just a super rugged airplane. We take it low level over Antarctica for 10 hours at a shot. You don't really want to do that with a 2-engine airplane if you can avoid it.
I think my favorite is SOFIA. There's something about the 747. It's an absolutely magnificent airplane, and it's funny. In 1969, I was a 4-year-old kid. I got my first airplane ride in the UK, and it's a very small airplane. And when I got out of this plane, my eyes were about this big, and the pilot, the instructor guy, gave me a postcard and said, "Here's son, this is the future," and it was a artist's rendition of what the 747 was going to be. It was on the drawing boards in '69 and about to fly, and so I kind of like that loop that I closed when I flew the 747. So it's a magnificent airplane.
Yeah, it really has no bad handling qualities. The older airplanes like the DC-8, 707 had very heavy control forces. They had mock pitch over tendencies. Sometimes the 707 had really bad Dutch roll. The 747 is pretty much not really a fault to it.
back in the 1980s, I've flown from Auckland to London in 23 hours 15 in a 747 SP, Pan American, as you mentioned.
Wow.
Could have been this airplane.
It was about 20 minutes on the ground, I think. I think we may have changed from one SP to another with a very brief stop in LA.
Yes. Yeah. Great airplane. Very long legs, the SP.
Ours doesn't get quite as long a legs because our fuel fraction is limited because we've got that 40 or 17-ton telescope. So the empty weight's actually fairly heavy. So we get about, I think we probably do about 11, 12 hours is the maximum. We can't get the range that a commercial aircraft did when it was lighter.
You can imagine the engineering job too, putting a 17-ton weight in the back of the airplane. The pilots amongst you will know what that means in terms of CG. And we ended up having to bolt steel plate under the forward section of the airplane in quite large amounts to balance it out. And they put all the computers for the telescope, and there's racks and racks of computers up front to balance it out. Yeah. I do have I've got some stickers and patches and stuff if anybody's interested. So I'll put some up here.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is my 5th trip to Christchurch, and I come to this museum every time. It's I really think it's an extraordinary resource you guys have. So thank you.
Thank you.